Hi, it's me. If all the ice on Earth melted, our planet would be in big trouble. Sea levels would rise by over 60 meters. Coastal cities like New York, Shanghai, and London would be underwater. The Caribbean islands would disappear. In fact, many of us wouldn't have a home to go back to. So we'd better learn how to prevent that from happening. But don't worry, there is still hope for us. Stay with us until the end of the video and you'll find out why. If all glaciers melted, the water level in the oceans would rise by about 200 feet or 60 meters. And this process has already begun. You probably know that global warming causes melting of the North Pole ice cap. In 1971, the ice cap covered an area of 4.7 million square miles. Now it covers 4.3 million square miles. That's almost 90,000 square miles less than it did half a century ago. But that's not enough reason to panic because the volume of the ice cap has only slightly decreased. However, the thing is that together with the reduction in area, the average thickness of the ice cover also decreased from 3.3 to 3 feet, and all the extra water went straight into the ocean. According to NASA, since 2003, we've been losing 2,800 cubic miles of ice every year. And the speed of melting is only increasing. For example, between 2011 and 2019, the Greenland ice sheet lost 276 billion gallons of water annually. That's 40% more than in the previous decade. And Antarctica is experiencing similar changes. Between 2008 and 2015, its ice loss accelerated by 250 per year. But even if the entire Greenland and Antarctic ice melted, that wouldn't cause a major flood. The point is that all that water is already included in the ocean, and it won't raise the water level much. Scientists estimate that the oceans will rise no more than 1.5 to 3 meters. That's what melting all the ice on Earth would lead to. So where does all the extra water come from? It's the glaciers and the ice sheets that lie outside the Arctic Circle and are not directly related to the North Pole. The largest of them is the Laurentide ice sheet. It's located in Canada and the northern part of the United States and has an area of 160,000 square kilometers. Its maximum thickness reaches 3,200 feet. And if the entire Laurentide ice sheet melts, the water level will rise by 6.5 meters. The second giant is the Cordilleran ice sheet. Its area is 52,000 square kilometers. Most of it lies in British Columbia and Alaska, and some parts stretch onto the western coast of Canada and the United States. The Cordilleran ice sheet is much smaller than the Laurentide ice sheet, but it's also much more extensive. If it melts completely, the sea level will rise by about 1.5 meters. The Antarctic and Greenland ice sheets will have a lesser impact on this process. Even if they melt completely, the water level will rise by no more than 60 centimeters. But the thing is that these two ice giants are melting at an alarming rate, and it means that the predicted 60-meter rise in the water level may occur much faster than expected. For example, based on the current trends, scientists predict that in the next 200 years, the Greenland ice sheet will lose at least half of its volume. As for the Antarctic ice sheet, it's very difficult to make predictions here. Some scientists believe that it will remain stable in the next few hundred years. Others think it will start melting at an accelerated rate. At worst, the Antarctic ice sheet could melt within a few decades. But even if it happens, most of the water will stay in Antarctica. Scientists estimate that only 10% of it will end up in the ocean. But what if all the ice on Earth melts not within hundreds of years, but much faster? Let's say it happens before our very eyes. What would the world look like then? First, we'd see dramatic changes in the landscape. Many islands would disappear from the face of the Earth. Some countries would lose part of their territory. For example, the Maldives would sink completely. Indonesia would lose thousands of small islands. Australia would lose its northern part, and Africa would have to say goodbye to Madagascar. Then all the coastal cities would suffer. Some of them would be partially flooded, while others would sink entirely. Miami, for example, would be completely underwater. And not just Miami, most of Florida would become uninhabitable. Same with New York. Manhattan Island would be the first to go. Then the rest of New York would follow suit. Los Angeles would fare no better. Only the Hollywood sign would remain above the water. In Europe, the British Isles would be partially or completely underwater. England would have to say goodbye to London, Scotland to Edinburgh, and Wales to Cardiff. Germany would lose its coastline and a number of islands. and Denmark would shrink significantly. Things wouldn't be much better in Asia. Shanghai, Tokyo, Singapore, and Hong Kong would be underwater. The countries located on the eastern coast of the continent would lose their land, but the situation would be even worse in Oceania. Almost the entire territory of Australia would be flooded. Only the top of the mountains would remain above the water, and this would happen within just a few months, if not days. Of course, that's a disaster scenario. It's unlikely to happen anytime soon. However, according to scientists, even a 2-meter rise in water level will cause many problems. First, millions of people will have nowhere to live. The thing is that about 40% of the world's population lives within 100 kilometers of the coast. And if the water level rises by 2 meters, most of them will have to abandon their homes. And then there are the climate refugees. As you already understood, the countries that suffer the most from rising sea levels will be the ones situated on low-lying islands. Their inhabitants simply won't have anywhere to go. Climate change will also affect agriculture. Due to rising sea levels, saltwater will gradually begin to fill the riverbeds. As a result, soil salinity will increase and crop yields will decrease. Also, floods will become more common, causing irreparable damage to the fields. But it's not the worst. Rising water levels will lead to a shortage of fresh water. The fact is that about 97% of the Earth's water is salted and only 3% is fresh. Of that 3%, 2% is locked up in glaciers and snow, and only 1% of all the water on Earth is accessible to us. And if the ice on the planet melts, we'll lose 2% of all the existing fresh water. So we'll be left with only 1% of the water that can still be used. But how do we get it? After all, most of the remaining fresh water, about 68%, is in the form of groundwater. And rising sea levels will make it impossible to extract. The remaining 32% of fresh water is in rivers and lakes, but most of it is in fast-flowing rivers. That means it's very difficult to collect. Under these conditions, humanity will experience a severe water shortage. Water will be more expensive than oil. Therefore, conflicts over it will be inevitable. But there's good news. All the ice on Earth isn't going to melt so quickly, and we have enough time to prepare for the consequences. The main thing is to take action now. But what exactly needs to be done? There are several options here. The first is to reduce emissions of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The second is to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere using new technologies. And the third option is to develop methods to slow down the melting of glaciers. For example, scientists suggest painting roofs white so they reflect more sunlight and heat. Or maybe we can use umbrellas to protect the polar ice from the sun. Jokes aside, these are serious tasks that require international cooperation. But I think we can handle it. Moreover, we have to handle it not only for ourselves, but also for future generations. After all, it's our great-grandchildren who'll have to deal with the consequences of our inaction today.